Welcome back. You are listening to Nate the Hate on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And with that, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Modern Vintage Gamer.
Hello, Nate. It's great to be here. How are you doing today? What's going on? What are we talking about? What is happening? I know it's been a little while since our last show, but you know, we always say we only do shows when it's worth doing a show. We're not interested in all these rumors and things that have been going on over the last month or so, but it's great to be back. So what are we talking about today? And more importantly, how are you?
I am doing quite well. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm very excited to be recording again with you and behind the mic. I'm very excited about today's episode.
As am I, and I hope everyone listening is also having a terrific day. And if you are listening in the morning, I hope that your morning has started well and that your day continues to go well, and that we bring just a little bit of joy to your day. And yes, today is going to be a very exciting episode, as we are going to give our thoughts and predictions on the upcoming Xbox showcase, as a lot of people are attaching a great deal of hype and anticipation to Microsoft's June showcase, because Microsoft has had a very turbulent 2024, and it all started back in January, where people blamed me personally for destroying the Xbox brand.
Ooh.
For making mention that Microsoft was bringing some of their games to multiple platforms, including the Switch and PlayStation, and that led to several weeks of just pure internet delight with harassment and abuse. But we take it and we shoulder and move on. And now here comes Xbox with a showcase, and this potentially could be one of their biggest and best showcases, not only of this generation, but likely in the last decade, as there is just a vast majority and range of first-party software that Microsoft can headline at this show, because they've announced a lot of games, and many of these games need release dates. Others need a proper look and deep dive, and this could be the venue for us to finally shed new light on the vast majority of those games. And there's also third-party games and more to get a first look at, or just a further look at, as their 2024 or early 2025 release dates rapidly approach.
Well, before we dive in and talk about that list of games, our predictions, I do want to address something real quick about Xbox showcases. I feel like every year, Nate, we walk in very hyped about Xbox. We're like, this is the year that they're going to really just wow us with a fantastic showcase. And to give them credit, they've had some pretty good ones over the last couple of years. Like, none of them, like in recent times, have really been that disappointing from my perspective. They've been pretty solid, but I do think that this year is probably the most important showcase of Xbox's career at this point, because you're right, they've had a very turbulent 2024. Things started out very badly, I feel, and I think they have a lot of work to do to restore some of that confidence in their customers, in their consumers. Some people have been kind of a little rattled by what's going on with Xbox at the moment. Myself personally, I made a video about it maybe about a month ago, talking about my concerns with Xbox and the future of the brand. I definitely have some questions around the decision making that's been going on and the direction that is seemingly where Xbox is heading. And I don't want to talk about that because this is a showcase predictions episode, but I did say in that video that the showcase is where Microsoft can turn things around with some really good showings, some good games, some good pacing. And I think they know that. And I do think, Nate, that they have a solid list of games for this showcase. So I'm pretty excited. I'm keeping my expectations in check. I'm keeping my hype levels at the levels they should be. I'm not getting super hyped about this, but I am quietly confident that Xbox, they know that they were hit with some pretty hard haymakers over the last few weeks, and they know that they haven't been knocked out. They were on the ropes for a bit, but now they're back. They've got a second wind, and they're ready to to enter round 2. And I think this is going to be a good one.
That's the thing with Microsoft approaching the showcase. I don't feel as though this is a showcase that is going to turn the generation around for them.
Definitely
The generation is lost.
Right.
But what the showcase can do for the Xbox brand is help instill brand confidence.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about strictly the hardware and the box. I'm talking about the brand itself, which is Microsoft as an entity with the Xbox, where Xbox is just a product. That also includes their multi-platform approach, where we've had Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded come to Switch and PlayStation 5, and that is fully encompassed in that Xbox brand. And going into the showcase, that's what they have to show confidence in.
I love how you forget about Pentiment, by the way. Just putting that out there. No context,
because
just saying.
Pentiment is so good that doesn't need to be named. The fans of Pentiment know it's there. They have enjoyed the thrilling tale that Pentiment delivered. But yeah, this is really just a show to come out and show the consumer that Xbox, be it as a major publisher or as a console maker, can deliver high quality games. And we're going to see really a lot of fruits from that at this showcase, with games coming this year, games in 2025 and beyond. So it definitely feels a bit different than previous years, where we still looked at it as, can Microsoft turn the generation around? Whereas now it's just, show us that you can be a competent company that can deliver quality. And I think they are going to deliver on that promise this year, because there are just so many games that are ready to be shown. These are games that some we saw back in 2020 or 2021 that we knew were in the pipeline. And it was just a question of, when are we going to see them? When will we hear about them? And we're finally at that stage where they are out of that infancy stage and they're ready to be shown. They're ready to be introduced to the world, and we can get excited for them. Yes, Microsoft is definitely in that dark period where there's a lot of uncertainty over the future of their hardware approach. But as a brand, as a publisher, their days can't be any more bright. And
Right.
that is in lieu of the recent layoffs that they have endured with Tango and Arcane Austin. It's dark. The tunnel is exceptionally dark, but there is light at the end of it, as Microsoft is kind of consolidating in their vision of what they can be as a company. And unfortunately, in that consolidation, there are layoffs. There are hard decisions to be made. And we are seeing that now, not just by Microsoft, but as the industry as a whole is currently suffering from that endemic that is layoffs. But Microsoft is coming into the June showcase looking to celebrate the achievements of their development team and their partners, and the consumers have something to look forward to in just a couple of days when the June showcase takes place. But what I want to open this episode with is just a very quick touch on Microsoft's approach to multi-platform games, as naturally there are some form of expectation going into the showcase and wonder whether or not Microsoft is going to announce additional multi-platform games. And just going to address this very briefly. Microsoft's multi-platform approach continues to evolve. They do have many more games intended to go multi-platform. I personally know of 6 games that will be going multi-platform. The uncertainty is the venue and timing in which they will be announced. I don't believe Microsoft is going to use this showcase as that venue to highlight or announce further multi-platform initiatives. But could something come up at Summer Games Fest? Perhaps. I personally have not heard that. And because I don't have high-level confidence in terms of timing when these games will be announced, I will not be naming them here, but they are significant games. These are major IPs under the Microsoft brand that will eventually be going multi-platform, whether it's later this year or we see these games sometime in 2025 remains to be seen. But Microsoft's approach and commitment to multi-platform remains high and strong, and this is going to be something that we will be seeing for the foreseeable future when it comes to Xbox Game Studio games going multi-platform. The 4 games from earlier this year are just the beginning. This is going to be an ongoing development that we just see gradually unfold until Microsoft is ready to just fully embrace this directive, whether that is in 2025, 2026, after the introduction of their next generation hardware. All of that remains to be seen, but we will be seeing more multi-platform games in the near or close by future.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense, that what you said there. Like the 4 games they initially announced, look, a lot of people threw out the term that it was a test to test the market. I'm not really sure if that's an accurate thing to say, but I think we can all agree that it was the first of more to come. So based on what you're saying, I'm not very surprised to hear that. From all accounts, it sounds like the games that did go multi-platform have all done very well in their own way, as far as the markets they're trying to hit. So it makes a lot of sense that they would continue to do that. And also, I mean, I think as much as that era or that period of time back in January there was a lot of unhappy customers. A lot of people were confused. It's done now. Like Microsoft has successfully kind of communicated that messaging. So anything now that becomes multi-platform isn't really a big surprise. I guess the only thing that I would say is we haven't seen a big AAA title get that treatment, but I would expect to see that going forward as well. It's not a big surprise to me, but you're right. It's a matter of when they would announce that, how they communicate that. I don't think the showcase is the right way to do that, but I could definitely see them say something like first on Game Pass or some type of branding around that, just to make sure that, hey, you are still getting this game day one on Game Pass for free. And I'm using air quotes when I say for free. So, I think they could do something like that, but it'll be interesting to see what those titles are when they get announced.
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that I have been investigating for several months now, and it's just the uncertainty of when they will be announced gives me pause to mention them now, because I don't want to mention them at this moment as we're talking about a June showcase prediction and they're not announced for another 6 or 9 months.
Right.
That's unfair to do this early, especially as we know plans can change, schedules can shift. So until I have more confidence and a better time window in terms of the games releasing, as well as their announcement intent, I'll hold off on that. But yes, Microsoft remains very committed to their multi-platform approach. But with that now said, it's time to get into some of the June showcase predictions, and we will start with the third parties, because Microsoft's definitely been building a nice little relationship with a variety of third parties, and there's a wide range of rumors currently circulating of what third parties could be there, which companies will bring major announcements. So let's get right into it, and let's start with a very friendly company with Microsoft, and that is Capcom.
Capcom is always an interesting one at an Xbox showcase, because I think it's fair to say that Capcom has been much more aligned to Sony when it comes to marketing, with many of their big titles. Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, for example, are the big ones right now. And I don't really see that changing. So the difficult part is, well, what games would we expect to see at a Xbox showcase? I do think there will be some Capcom presence. And the one that really kind of comes to mind, I guess, is the Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess game will be at this showcase. What do you think about that to kind of kick things off?
It makes a lot of sense, as it was featured in the Xbox showcase last year. It's also coming to Game Pass. The game is currently slated for release in 2024. So I think it would be a nice opportunity for Microsoft and Capcom to give us a further look at the game, a closer look at the gameplay, because when we look at the Capcom support that we've seen in previous Microsoft shows, it's always primarily focused on Game Pass games, and a lot of them have been multiplayer games. Think back to last year where we saw Exoprimal
Mm-hmm.
and came to Game Pass and such. And, it was a nice little game. And when Path of the Gods was announced, a lot of people had initially mistook it for an Onimusha game. And they only realized it wasn't Onimusha when we saw that it did have a multiplayer focus to it. So this just feels as though it's going to be a natural type of title to make an appearance at the June showcase, just to reintroduce the players, give us that release date, further commit it to Game Pass, and give people that confidence in their Game Pass subscription of, hey, you're getting another Capcom game that's multiplayer driven. It looks unique. It's coming out later this year. And I think that's more or less a sure thing at this point, because as you pointed out, more of the bigger titles from Capcom, be it Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, have always been aligned with Sony. So Microsoft definitely goes for more outlier titles from Capcom, little, maybe the newer IPs that have potential. And they're willing to give Capcom that Game Pass check and roll the dice of maybe this becomes something. Let's be there first.
Yeah.
Let's get it on our brand. Let's give you an audience to really just dive into the game, and let's see what we can make of it. And this feels as though it's just like in that Exoprimal type of state of multiplayer game. We have Game Pass. Let's put it there. Let's see what we can do. Let's work together.
Yep, I agree. I think it's just a battle luck for me.
Now, one Capcom game that whenever you think of Capcom and Xbox, there's one franchise that will pop into your head. And this is my prediction that Capcom is going to show up at the June showcase with a brand new Dead Rising.
Ooh, I like this. Now, are we talking about a remake of one of the original games, or are we talking about a new Dead Rising? Because Dead Rising 4, if you recall, was a little bit all over the place, and that kind of signaled the end for, was it Capcom Vancouver Studios?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. My info may be a little bit off there, so anyone in the comments, feel free to correct me, but I believe it was Vancouver. But so when you say Dead Rising, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a remake, a new Dead Rising experience?
I think if I were Capcom at this point, I think I would go for a full-on reboot.
I think that's
in the vein, like maybe remake the first one in the form of a reboot.
I think that's a really, really good idea for many reasons. But the one that I really like about that is, if you remember when Dead Rising came out on the 360, Nate, it had that really awesome zombie tech where you had like hundreds of zombies on screen at once, and they were really kind of showing it off. I feel like with the Series X, they could just boost that like by a significant number of times and have a really awesome Dead Rising experience. So yeah, I like your idea about a Dead Rising reboot. I think, personally speaking, I think it's a little bit of a willing into existence, but I'm not going to rule it out. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you think of Capcom and Xbox, you think of Dead Rising. Maybe you think of Lost Planet, because these were two games that were big time exclusives during the early 360 generation, because the PlayStation 3 still had not yet come to market and Microsoft was out there and they were just securing big things. And as you mentioned, that zombie tech, the first time you saw Dead Rising on a 360 and you went into the mall and you had hundreds of zombies on the screen.
Yep.
It was kind of that, wow, this is what next gen is all about. You had previous examples, be it Elder Scrolls Oblivion, maybe Fight Night Round 3, but it was kind of Dead Rising where you stopped and looked at it and said, wow, this is what we're going to get from games. Now, a few months later, you had Gears of War hit, and that completely changed everyone's expectations of what next-gen visuals could be, thanks to Unreal Engine 3. But Dead Rising was one of those defining moments that really separated the 360 or the HD generation from that PlayStation 2 generation. It just showed what the hardware was capable of and how much more grand the scope of games could get. So I would love for Capcom just to show up at this showcase with a brand new Dead Rising. And as we know, Phil Spencer last year did come out and say we're working with our Japanese partners to secure and bring more exclusives and games to the Xbox. And Capcom was one of their great partners back in the 360 generation.
Yeah.
And Dead Rising was that game. So let's make it happen again. We had Dead Rising as a launch game on Xbox One.
Yeah. Dead Rising 3, I think it was. Yep.
Wasn't received all that well.
I love that
kind
game.
Of a controversial.
Dude, I love Dead Rising 3. That was such a fun game.
It was. And I think time has been kind to it. It's just initially that wasn't the Dead Rising people wanted. But as time went on, people kind of grew to appreciate it. So if I'm Microsoft, I'm going to Capcom and I'm saying, hey, let's get Dead Rising back. It's been a while. So what do you need from us? I think this would be a good venue to kind of showcase a brand new Dead Rising.
I like it.
Then we have EA, which there's already the expectation that we will be seeing the brand new Dragon Age game at Summer Games Fest, as well as at the Microsoft Showcase, as Jeff Grubb of Giant Bomb put out earlier this week that it will be at both. So I guess my question to you would be, when do you think Dragon Age is going to release?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think, and I'm saying this without any real emphasis or certainty, Nate, I think it's going to come out late this year. Could be November this year.
Ooh, you're going that late in the year.
I'm going late. I think Dragon Age is coming, but it's going to be one of those games that kind of bookends 2024 for me. What do you got?
I'm going to come much sooner.
Okay.
September
is a good month, but
right around the corner.
But there are a lot of other games that we're going to predict in this episode that I feel like could be in September as well. So let's put a pin in that and come back to it. I think it's a little later than September personally, but again, I mean, Dragon Age has been in development for such a long time. I feel like it's been literally in development since, for 10 years almost. I mean, it's probably not that long, but Inquisition was a long, long time ago now.
Inquisition, I believe, was 2017.
Wow. It's been a minute. So, yeah, I think it's a little later than September.
See, I'm personally not that big of a fan of the Dragon Age games. And it's weird because the genre type and the gameplay type is something that should appeal to me. But I play them back on the 360. I tried Dragon Age 1, tried 2, and the games just never clicked for me. The narratives didn't click. The characters didn't click.
Did you say Inquisition was 2017? Are you sure?
Was it?
Because Inquisition was an Xbox 360 title. It was a cross-gen title. I swear. I'm looking right now.
Maybe it was 2014. That feels very early.
It came out in 2014. I knew it because it was a 360 and a 1 title. It was a cross-gen title. It's been a minute. It's been a minute, Nate,
since the last Dragon Age game.
Yep.
All right, that's a long time.
I am actually a fan of Dragon Age. I've played all of them, and I really, really like all 3 of the games. I think the weakest one was 2 because there was a lot of copy and paste, especially the dungeons themselves. You could tell that they were under a lot of crunch, and they just did everything they could to get the game out. I even enjoyed Inquisition. I thought it was a fine game. I played a bunch of the DLCs as well. Look, I'm a Dragon Age fan. The problem is, because the last game was in 2014, we have confirmed, it's been such a long time. It's been what? We're talking about 10 years. We're talking 10 years.
Yes.
And incidentally, Nate, Inquisition released on November the 18th, 2014. So I'm sticking to November for this next Dragon Age game. 10 years, 10-year anniversary of Inquisition. Let's go.
Okay, I like that line of thought. I'm sticking with September. I do have a question for you since you are a big fan of the franchise. Mm-hmm. In a post-Baldur's Gate 3 world, what are your expectations for this new Dragon Age?
See, that is the difficult part with what to expect here, because Baldur's Gate 3 has raised the bar now. You know what I mean? It's going to make it very difficult for a game like a new Dragon Age to come in and do as well as Baldur's Gate 3. But look, BioWare they make great games. The previous Dragon Age games were very good. I do expect to see good things from Dragon Age, the new Dragon Age game. But, as far as what they'll give us, that's a very difficult thing to answer at this point. Like, it's been such a long time since we've heard anything from Dragon Age. And if it is true that this game has been in development for 10 years, it's so hard to really know if this game is even going to be anywhere of the caliber of a Baldur's Gate 3 at this point. We just don't know. And we haven't really seen anything about it. So I'm respectfully going to just sit on the fence on this one and see what they show us first before getting excited about it. Look, I love Dragon Age, and I'm very interested to see what they have, but I'm also kind of ready to walk away if what they show us isn't really that good. And I have played Baldur's Gate, and I've enjoyed that game a lot too.
Mm-hmm. I do want to note that as we're going through the third-party predictions, there's naturally going to be some overlap between what could be shown at the Xbox Showcase and what could be shown at Summer Games Fest. So you're going to have some games that will be featured at both. So take our third-party predictions as also an inclusion of what we expect to see at Summer Games Fest as a whole, which would naturally include the Xbox Showcase. That brings us to Ubisoft, who kind of has a busy year this year. We know they have two major releases coming out later this year, one being Star Wars Outlaw, and then we have Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, the latter we haven't seen any gameplay of, but the former we did have a very, I guess you could call it a deep dive last year where we saw a sufficient amount of gameplay. So we have an idea how exactly Outlaws will play. Shadows, we literally remain in the shadows, but Ubisoft does have their annual Ubisoft Connect airing next week. Do you think either one of these games have a presence at the Xbox Showcase? And if so, in what form? Just be it a quick trailer type of situation?
I think that we'll see Star Wars Outlaws at the Xbox Showcase. I think we'll see a trailer of that. The one that I'm kind of juggling in my head, Nate, is Assassin's Creed Shadows. I think there is a good chance that a trailer of the game, and when I say a trailer, I don't mean the same cinematic trailer that we saw previously. Maybe something that shows off some gameplay, for example, could be at this showcase. I'm just trying to think back to previous Assassin's Creed marketing. Like, was Valhalla something that that Ubisoft showed themselves at their event, or did they have that at an Xbox showcase? I really need to go back and look, but
usually they tend to kind of double dip in certain situations.
Don't they? Like,
yeah.
Do you remember? I know this is a bad example, but Far Cry 6. I mean, they had that everywhere.
Yeah, that was at every single
Gamescom
presentation
and the Game Awards and E3. I mean, it was everywhere. I'm going to say we're going to see Assassin's Creed Shadows at the Xbox Showcase. Something with a little more meat on the bone, maybe some in-game cinematics with some in-game combat potentially.
Yeah, more a formal look at the game.
Yeah.
And then Ubisoft would naturally follow up the following day with a better look at some of the in-game systems and the mechanics and a gameplay dive into some of the newer features and such. So essentially use the showcase as a means of saying, tune in tomorrow for a deeper look at the game.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2020 showcase. And Assassin's Creed Valhalla was one of the games featured in that showcase. Now, it was already previously announced, but it was in there. So, yeah, I like this new Assassin's Creed game for the showcase.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm kind of expecting that both will be there, and be it just a trailer and maybe that mix of gameplay and such. We'll get the deeper dive at the Ubisoft Connect naturally, but I think they're just two good games that Microsoft will have on stage because they do have the Ubisoft program as an option on the system itself. It's not included with Game Pass or anything, and because there is no Sony presentation, we already had the state of play. These games were not featured in it. They're going to look for a partner to go with, and Microsoft is just right there for them. Though you do have Summer Games Fest as well, but considering you do have Ubisoft Connect, I wonder if that's a little conflicting, where you do want to have that console manufacturer as your partner in terms of marketing and such. And it feels as though Microsoft would definitely want both of these games. These are two huge games coming out later this year. And having them both at the show would definitely be beneficial for them, get some buzz and conversation going. But yeah, I feel as though these two definitely have a realistic chance of being included. And then hopefully Ubisoft has something nice and surprising for us in their own show just the following day on Monday. And I really want to get a look at Splinter Cell. Please.
Yeah, we need some Splinter Cell stuff. I'm ready.
We're all ready. That brings us to Sega Atlas. Now, Atlas has been playing very nicely with Microsoft over the last several years. They've had the Persona games featured at June showcases. And last year, we had a first look at Metaphor ReFantazio, which is coming out later this year. So it feels as though we will get another look at Metaphor and just that, that affirmation of its release date and how it's coming to Game Pass and all those finer details that we already know, but just putting it front and center once again to let us know this is happening. It's coming soon. Get it on Game Pass. This is a reason to subscribe. Do you think Sega or Atlas show up with any other game at the June showcase, or do you think this is going to be their primary focus with that being a major release later this year for their company?
Well, I think Metaphor ReFantazio is on the list for the showcase. The question is, will there be anything else? Now, obviously, we know that Sega has some other games in development. They're working on a new Jet Set Radio game. They're working on a new Golden Axe game. They're working on a new Crazy Taxi, I believe. And there was a fourth game that escapes me right now that they were working on.
Shinobi?
Yes, that's the one. Shinobi, thank you. I'm going to roll the dice, Nate, and I'm going to say one of those four games will appear in some capacity. I don't know which one, but if we're thinking about Xbox and the history and the legacy of Xbox, the one that really kind of springs to mind is Jet Set Radio. Now, obviously, it was originally on the Sega Dreamcast, and then Future came out on the Xbox. So I think Phil opened up his checkbook, and we're going to get some update, some type of teaser trailer of the new Jet Set Radio game by Sega.
I like your line of thinking there. I like the optimism. I feel as though it's probably too soon to see those games, but if they show up on this stage, I would definitely be, amongst the people applauding with excitement to get a deeper look at that type of title. And I mean, I'm just going in with those very low-level expectations from Sega Atlas with just Metaphor being that primary game. I would love to get a teaser trailer of Persona 6 because that is a game that is long overdue to be formally announced. And Atlas continues to just hold back in terms of announcing that game and giving official details. And I mean, I would kind of put that as a flip the coin situation, whether or not Persona 6 could show up here. I haven't heard that it will show up. Now, on the same token, I also haven't heard that it won't show up. But I'm hopeful that maybe Persona 6 could be that surprise, because that would just show that commitment that Microsoft has with their Japanese partners. If they're able to bring Persona 6 to their stage and have that first announcement and presentation for that game, it would really speak volumes to the efforts that they have made to make the Xbox brand more appealing to the Japanese audience. as well as the Western audience who enjoys those Japanese style games. It's just a question of, is this the time and place for Atlas to announce Persona 6, or would they rather wait until Tokyo Game Show, or if they can afford it, wait until next year, be it the Xbox Developer Direct that they do to start off the calendar year, or once again in June of 2025. It all comes down to, what is the release date for Persona 6 and how much marketing lead time does Atlas want to give the game? Because whenever you look at previous Persona games, they always announce them too early and then they get delayed and it feels as though it's an eternity. So they seem to be kind of taking that to heart, and they're ensuring that when they show it and they have a release window or a target in mind, they're going to hit that date. They're not going to have to delay it a full year or 6 months or anything like that. But I'm going to throw it out there in the universe that we see a Persona 6 teaser trailer.
Oof.
It probably won't happen, but I want to believe.
I'm going to say Tokyo Game Show for that one.
It's probably the better venue, but conversely, Metaphor was announced last June, and that easily could have been held for something like the Tokyo Game Show.
That's true.
So very challenging. But yeah, that's all I would anticipate from Sega Atlas on my side. Even, yes, as you mentioned, Sega does have a wide variety of other games in development. They could show up with anything, be it a Sonic game, Puyo Puyo, whatever they want to do. But Metaphor feels as though that is the most likely game to show up here. Then have everyone's favorite company, Konami, who just recently gave us a deeper look at Silent Hill 2 coming to PlayStation 5 later this year.
And don't forget Rocket Knight Adventures Respark coming out on June 11th everywhere, except for Xbox.
This episode is not sponsored by LRG. But Rocket Knight Adventure will be distributed by LRG.
Everywhere except for Xbox.
For pre-orders right now. Cue the banner at the bottom of the episode. Yes, we have Konami, they have Silent Hill 2, and they have one other major release that is pending a release date, and that is Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. And our first look at Metal Gear Solid 3 actually came at an Xbox presentation.
It did.
So I'm expecting we will see a brand new trailer of Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta during the June showcase. And hey, maybe we got to look at it elsewhere in Summer Games Fest as well. But definitely going to be seeing that game in the next few days. It's just a question of, will we get a release date? What do you think?
I'm going to be a little controversial here, Nate. We're not going to see MGS3 Delta at the Xbox showcase.
Interesting.
I don't think we're going to see it. I feel like what we saw last year was a very well put together vertical slice of a world that could facilitate a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. But unless there's some information I'm missing here, I feel like we're still a ways off from seeing this game come out. Is there anything that you know about this that I'm not familiar with, like as far as how far along this game is and when we should expect to see it? Because I kind of felt like last year was very well put together, a little cinematic of some potential gameplay, but I feel like we're still probably about at least 18 months from seeing this game.
The only thing that we had seen earlier this year was Sony on the PlayStation blog site had listed Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta as a 2024 release for the PlayStation 5. And naturally, people took that as a confirmation, because why would Sony publish that on their blog if they didn't have some sort of communication with Konami to indicate that had at least been an intent? I don't think the game comes out 2024. I think the game is going to be a first half 2025 release. But I think we do get a trailer during the Xbox showcase. And I think it's just going, if we get any type of release communication, it might just be that vague 2025. We're not going to get an exact release date at this time. I think that's something that Konami will communicate maybe later in the year, once they're able to kind of solidify their release target itself. But I think first half 2025 is when we will see Snake sneak onto consoles.
I hope so.
Now, one of the big companies that has been supporting Xbox over the course of this generation, and just recently last summer went on stage at Tokyo Game Show and further committed their relationship as being solid and how they were going to work together more strongly than ever, is Square Enix. So coming into this showcase, there's a lot of anticipation as to what will Square Enix bring to the Xbox consoles, and what direction is this relationship going to take? And just during this week, we had Octopath Traveler 1 and Octopath Traveler 2 get added to Game Pass. Octopath Traveler 1 had released on Xbox a couple of years ago, was removed from Game Pass after about a year, and now it's once again available on Game Pass. And Octopath Traveler 2 was announced last year as I believe it was either a winter or spring release for 2024, so they definitely waited to the last minute there. But we also had Final Fantasy 14 come over to Xbox, and that was a long time in the making. Mm-hmm. That was announced back for the Xbox 360.
Yep.
And it was held back due to Xbox Live and other obstacles. Then it was supposed to come to Xbox One, never did, and it finally became reality just a couple of months ago. So now everyone is wondering, what is Square Enix going to bring to Xbox, and what could we see at this showcase? And I'm kind of going into this with high hopes and expectations. I'm very optimistic as to what Square Enix is going to show up with here. Do you share my enthusiasm?
I do share your enthusiasm. I don't know if it's going to be like completely stacked, but I do think there's going to be some bigger announcements from Square Enix. And the one that I guess comes to mind, maybe it's a little low-hanging fruit, would be the Visions of Mana game that we obviously know about already. We know that it exists. We know it's coming out. I think does it have a date? If it doesn't have a date, it's going to get a date. Let me just check right now while I talk about it.
Does not have a release date.
Doesn't have a date. It's 2024. So I think Visions of Mana is the pick for me. But there's probably more. But what do you think is also coming from Square Enix camp?
I agree with your Visions of Mana. As we all know, earlier this year, Visions of Mana had interrupted the Xbox Developer Direct.
Yes.
And made a surprise visit. And to have a game like Visions of Mana disrupt the broadcast definitely shows that this relationship is an interesting one. This is one that Microsoft is willing to work with Square Enix. They wanted to showcase Visions of Mana on that stage. And now we're in June, a bigger stage. So if you're Square, you want to bring some sizable announcements of your own. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the venue where we see Final Fantasy 16 get announced for the Xbox.
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we started recording, and I think there's a more than better chance of this showing up at this showcase. FF16 is a game that I know you are a big fan of. I'd love to see it on the Xbox. I think it's almost the right match, to get FF16 onto Xbox because, obviously there's a lot of fans that are kind of waiting to see more Final Fantasy, more Square Enix games make their way to Xbox consoles. But 16 for me feels like on the PlayStation 5, it's a very, very good game. But there are some things technically that's kind of holding back the game a little bit. And I think if they do a really good solid port to the Series X and take advantage of the hardware, it could be something special. And also have what we would consider a director's cut or a complete edition or whatever you want to call it that has all the DLC that's already been added as well to incentivize people that may have already played the game before to give it another go. Look, I love Final Fantasy 16 when it came out last year, Nate. Big fan of the game. If I saw this come out on Xbox with a complete edition and it did run well and it looked good, I could double dip. I could honestly double dip. So I'm into this FF16 prediction. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, we know the exclusive hold has now expired. All of the DLC is available on PlayStation 5. We're simply awaiting that PC announcement.
Yep.
When Final Fantasy 16 will come out. And I think the June showcase is a good time to announce it for both Xbox and PC. Not for release in 2024. I think it would release sometime in early 2025, maybe a year following that final DLC that dropped earlier this year. So, Sony has well over an 18-month type of exclusive hold on the game.
Yeah.
And that's when it will drop on Xbox early next year. It's really just a question of when will Final Fantasy 16 be announced for Xbox. It's not a question of if at this point. It's when.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing we have to remember is recently the president of Square Enix did talk about a switch in focus, no pun intended, to a more multi-platform type stuff. That seems like that is going to be the move for them. And it does tell me that they will start to bring more games to Xbox over time, and we're starting to see that. So FF16 for me is a good one.
I also think Square Enix is going to bring kind of their backlog of games that previously didn't come over to the Xbox. And it could be smaller games, something like Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, Harvest Stella, Dragon Quest Builders 1, because the sequel did come to Xbox. Maybe some of the Saga games, maybe the older Mana games that were available on other platforms. I wouldn't be surprised to see those type of titles get announced as Game Pass releases coming out, this summer, later this year, or early next year. And this is the venue that they choose to announce those type of games.
Yeah.
I think that would definitely show that commitment that Square Enix has for the Xbox, line of hardware, and just the support that they're willing to bring to the platform. And I think that would go a long way in that message that Microsoft has been trying to deliver and capture over the course of the generation, that they are making efforts in Japan. And I think just getting that backlog of games would definitely aid in that. So overall, if Square Enix can come with that level of announcements, it would definitely instill a little bit of confidence if you are strictly an Xbox owner. I guess the issue you would run into is that if you are a multi-platform owner, if you own a Switch as well as an Xbox, or you own a PlayStation, these titles aren't necessarily going to excite you all that much as they would be older releases. But if you don't have another platform, or let's just say Xbox is your primary system, that is a nice little offering of games, even if it is just Final Fantasy 16. To have mainline Final Fantasy come back to the system is definitely an exciting moment. So I want Square Enix to come heavy. I want them to come loaded. And I want them to drop some significant announcements for the Xbox brand.
I like it. Yeah, if FF16 gets announced, that's definitely a milestone. And, the Xbox leadership obviously have done a lot of work to get that. So hopefully we'll see it.
Now, 2K has come out with a tweet about a month or so ago saying that they're going to have a fan favorite be announced at Summer Games Fest. And there's a lot of rumors going around as to what it could be. It ranges from Mafia to Borderlands and beyond. BioShock, what have you. Now, I don't think this would be a game that's going to be at the Xbox showcase per se, but since we're also talking Summer Games Fest, I figure it'd just be a fun, quick prediction to end the third-party segment with. What do you think 2K could potentially be teasing here?
I personally think it's only one game and one game only, Nate, and that is Borderlands 4. I think Randy Pitchford has been cooking up some stuff over the last few years. I think Borderlands 4 is the fan favorite announcement. Everyone loves Borderlands. So yeah, I think that's the game.
I mean, I'd say that's the rational, logical prediction. I'm going to go in a complete opposite direction.
Go on.
Prepare yourself for this. I think it's a new Civilization.
Oh, that would be really awesome if they announced a new Civilization game. The reason why I don't think it's a Civilization game is because I just recently read an article about how in 2024 there was a sample of over like 1.5 million people that filled out a survey saying that no one is really interested in playing strategy games anymore. It's a very niche market. These days in 2024, we want to play live service games. We want quick bite-sized content. We want Fortnite. We want Call of Duty. We want Roblox. We want fast. And I think the idea of a sprawling strategy game, which, by the way, I love those games that potentially can last hours, doesn't really seem to fit in today's world. So I think that's the only reason why that would give me pause. But I do like Civilization. And if they did announce that, it is a fan favorite. There's no question about it. That would be a good pick. But I'm going to stick to my guns and no pun intended and say Borderlands 4 is the game.
Now we're going to do some indie games before we get into first party predictions. And naturally, there's just one indie game that matters. We saw it way back at a Xbox showcase a couple of years ago. At the time, it was supposed to come out in the next 12 months. Missed that target by several series of 12 months. And it's Team Cherry's Hollow Knight Silksong. This is the time.
It's time, Nate. It is time. We are finally going to get a trailer and a release date for Hollow Knight Silksong, which is a Game Pass game, I believe, because it was announced at the Xbox showcase 2 years ago now, I think.
Mm-hmm. And it is coming to Game Pass day one.
Coming to Game Pass day one. Here's the real question, and I don't want to pivot too far away, but I have to ask, which game is going to release first? And I say release, Metroid Prime 4 or Silksong? Which one do we see first?
Silksong.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say Silksong as well. But yeah, Silksong is it has to be at this show. I mean, I know nothing has to be at a showcase, but I feel like Silksong has to be at this showcase. We saw it 2 years ago. We were told it was coming within the next 12 months. Obviously, that was a mistake from Microsoft. They quickly pivoted from that format to the Developer Direct, which was a very smart move on their behalf. But Silksong was one of those games that was a casualty within that showcase. And there was some smoke earlier this year where there was some ratings for the game that kind of cropped up on ESRB. It wasn't ESRB. I think it was Korea.
I think it was the Korean and maybe the Australian rating.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of smoke there. Not much, but just signs of life, we'll say. But I don't think it's a coincidence. I do think it's this year. It will come out and it will be at the showcase.
I agree. Yeah, we'll get a trailer, we'll get a release date for the second half of this year. And, some people will say, oh, get the clown makeup on. If you're expecting Silksong, get the clown makeup away.
Yep.
Silksong is going to show up.
I agree.
We're getting that release date and everyone's going to celebrate and there'll be just champagne bottles popping throughout the land. We finally have a release date. We've finally seen the game again. The bug is coming out of its cocoon. It's going to blossom. It's just a question of, are we getting a moth or are we getting a butterfly from this game?
Well, that's the difficult part, right? Like we're all expecting, perfection. I couldn't say what it's going to present like. I think it will be because this game has been in development for a very, very long time. Team Cherry is a very small studio, as we know. So we'll have to see. But I do think we are going to get a final release date on Silksong for 2024.
Now, indie games they're very difficult to predict because there's such a variety of indie games that you never know what company is just going to randomly show up with one. Is there any other indie game that you're anticipating could show up at the June showcase or Summer Games Fest?
Yes, Replaced is my other pick for the game that I think will be, or the indie game that will be at the Xbox showcase. Now, Replaced was another one of those games that was shown off back in 2022. And I believe initially was said to be a Game Pass launch in 2023. Obviously, that date has come and gone. And there was nothing but radio silence for a long time. And I don't know if you remember Replaced, but it was like a 2.5D sci-fi retro action platforming game. It kind of reminded me of Flashback, the original Flashback game. So it had that cyberpunky kind of vibes to it. It really kind of resonated with me when they showed it originally. And I know it kind of won some kind of most anticipated game type awards and stuff like that. Best indie anticipated game and stuff. So yeah, I think Replaced is on the list. And there was some recent chatter about the game as well, I believe. I don't remember exactly specifically what it was, but there was some chatter about it. I think it was back in March of this year that all of a sudden its name kind of came up again. So I think it's coming to the showcase.
Yeah, I think that would be two solid indie games. Naturally, there will be a lot more, but if Microsoft can have those in their June showcase, I think that would excite a lot of people, especially just having Hollow Knight Silksong get that final trailer. And a release date is really all that anyone wants from that game, because every single time there's a presentation, be it a direct, a state of play, a June showcase, a developer direct, anything, everyone is asking, where is Team Cherry and where is Silksong? And we can finally put that to bed, much like the Silent Hill 2 meme that you started a couple of years ago. Whenever Sony had a showcase or state of play, you
went for 5 years
and say,
until it happened.
Where is Silent Hill 2?
I started talking about that in 2018, how I didn't think it was real. And it finally came to fruition.
And then about 18 months, 18 weeks.
18 weeks.
Playing it.
That's right.
But now it's time to go to some of the first party stuff, because Microsoft has a lot in that pipeline and there is a lot of potential of what could show up at this show. And I want to start with, let's just get this one out of the way because we know it's there. Activision will have Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We will see it. We'll have a deep dive immediately following the June showcase, so we don't have to give predictions or thoughts on what we could be seeing from Activision, because we know Call of Duty is going to be there.
Before we move on real quick, I wanted to ask you about the deep dive portion of the showcase. Last year they had one for Starfield, and I think it was a very good showing of Starfield, because there are a lot of people that didn't really know what Starfield was, and they didn't really know what type of game it was and all the things you could do on it. There was obviously some information about it previously, but they did a very good job, and I believe that it lasted almost an hour. It was like 55 minutes. And they showed us a whole bunch of stuff you could do in Starfield. And I walked away thinking to myself, you know what? Starfield looks like a good game. And I played it and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fine game last year. Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Why does it need an extended look, like in the same vein? We know what Call of Duty is. We know that the formula is pretty much the same. Obviously, there's going to be a new campaign. There may be, some set pieces that are going to excite fans. They'll show off some multiplayer stuff. Maybe they'll show off the zombie mode. But it's more of a known quantity. So why do you think they are actually taking the time to show us Call of Duty Black Ops 6, other than the fact that, hey, this does belong to Microsoft now and it is a big game, so we are going to give it the respect that it deserves?
See, I think if you want to break it down that way, I think Microsoft could have bigger games that could have easily been slotted into that deep dive.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
But this is also the Call of Duty that has had the single longest development cycle in well over a generation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that, just speculating, that the campaign is going to be far more significant than what we've seen from the last handful of Call of Duty games. And they want to kind of emphasize why this game took so long in development. Let's see the growth that maybe the campaign has undergone and just the expansion of that campaign and the in-game mechanics. Because you're right, in terms of the multiplayer or even the Warzone and Battle Royale and such, we generally know exactly what we're getting in terms of design and even features. So this feels as though this is just going to be that next step in evolution in terms of Call of Duty campaigns, which have definitely been kind of relegated to the back seat with more recent entries. I think they want to emphasize that this campaign is going to be something significant. This campaign is going to be one of those reasons you actually play this Call of Duty. It's not going to be that secondary reason or maybe just an afterthought completely. This is going to be something you want to play if you are picking up or downloading Call of Duty later this year. And I think that's something that they're trying to aim for here, because otherwise I don't think I would really assign it to this, this deeper look, because I would give it to something of more significance, be it Avowed or Indiana Jones. Now, on the flip side, it could also be they don't want to spoil too heavily those other two games, while Call of Duty has that casual and mass appeal. So that's going to bring more eyes onto the showcase because people want to see what's Call of Duty doing.
Right.
And then you've already had the announcement earlier this month that it's also coming to Game Pass. So maybe it's just kind of a culmination of all those things into one single unity. And that's why they want to emphasize Call of Duty this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very valid. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And part of me wonders, because Xbox and Call of Duty, I mean, they used to be on stage together at like showcases back on the 360 days. I remember we were talking about this the other day about Call of Duty Ghosts with the dog. You have a dog.
Yeah, like you have a dog. You want to care for your dog, and then the thing's mouth opened.
He's someone you care about. So maybe they're just kind of going back to their roots a little bit on this. But look, I mean, Call of Duty, Nate, is a guilty pleasure of mine. I buy it every year. I play it every year. We obviously have hundreds of hours of Warzone logged already. We play it a lot. So I'm not here to to sugarcoat it in any other way. I'm a big fan of Call of Duty. I have been pretty much since the start. So this is another game that I have heard, that the campaign is a lot darker this year, and that gets me interested, So I think maybe that's really all it takes for me to sit down and watch the Call of Duty 6, or so the Black Ops 6 deep dive after the showcase.
I mean, there is one other potential reason that maybe they're doing the deep dive after the showcase, but that's something we'll get into a little later. But I want to start with Bethesda for first party announcements, because Bethesda kind of has the biggest release coming later this year for Microsoft, and that's going to be Indiana Jones. We saw this game earlier this year where we got the first look at it, how it is blending first person and third person gameplay mechanics, and it's coming from a fantastic development studio. I just want to get another look at the game, get a better feel for the gameplay direction, even though we already do have a very, I guess you would say, clear vision of exactly how the game is approaching its gameplay with puzzles and the combat and such. But we need a release date.
Yeah.
When do you think Indiana Jones is going to release?
I think Indiana Jones is going to release in September of 2024. Your thoughts?
I think that's too soon.
Okay.
I'm thinking basically we're contrasting each other.
We are.
I'm going with November. I think it's going to be positioned as the holiday game.
I could split it down the middle, potentially. It could slip to October. I'm going to stick to my guns and say September. I think I think that is going to be the move here for this one. But we'll have to see. November will be interesting. You know, I feel like if they leave it till November, Nate, as much as I hate to say it, it puts them out of the Game Awards nominations if they leave it too late in November. But on the flip side, if it is a single player game that's a 15-hour main story campaign and a 40-hour completionist campaign, potentially they could get away with it.
See, it is a good point, especially with the Game Awards season having that deadline. But there is that loophole that as long as review code has been distributed ahead of the deadline and reviewers are playing it, it could still be nominated. And that's what Sony did with Death Stranding.
That's true.
They distributed the codes early enough that reviewers and media were able to play Death Stranding. So even though the game released post-deadline, they were playing the game pre-deadline and were able to nominate it. So if Microsoft sees any value in the Game Awards, and let's just say they date Indiana Jones around the time of that deadline, I think they're going to ensure that everyone has a review code in hand so that the game has a reasonable shot at being nominated. And it really comes down to when exactly that deadline is, because if they can release Indiana Jones, let's say the week, or I'll give it even 2 weeks before Black Friday, that's a great marketing blitz that they can do with that game. And this is definitely a major release for the Xbox brand later this year. This just has that, one, it has brand appeal with Indiana Jones.
Yep.
Then if it reviews well, and it should, it's coming from a very talented studio, fantastic games to their name and pedigree. If it reviews well, this is going to be a game that gets people talking. It's not going to turn around the fate of the system or the brand in any way, but this is going to be a game that potentially people say, man, I need to pick up an Xbox, or I'm going to get that on PC. I'm going to play that game any way I can. They could have a very significant release on their hands here. And it just has a lot going for it. And yes, this conversation did come up last year with Starfield of, could this be the game that turns things around? Is this the game that Xbox fans have been waiting for? I think Indiana Jones is in a better position because it has a recognizable character. Yeah. Everyone knows Indiana Jones. And if you put a nice marketing blitz behind it, strong commercials, good trailers, it's going to catch the attention of people who may not be all that much into gaming. But when you hear that theme song hit, you're going to look up at the TV and you're going to say, ooh, what's that? And you're going to get a little bit interested. Maybe not necessarily enough to go out and buy an Xbox, but
doesn't matter.
You have that interest forming.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be able to play it off the cloud or off your phone.
Mm-hmm. So that's where I think November, just position it as that huge holiday marketing blitz behind it. If you need to create bundles or anything for it, you can. But I'm ready to get that release date for Indiana Jones.
Yeah, for me, it's Elden Ring, Indiana Jones, and Assassin's Creed are the 3 games I'm most looking forward to this year.
Yeah, I can't wait for that Elden Ring DLC. But,
very excited.
I mean, Bethesda naturally also has some other stuff that will show up at this showcase. Every single year, we seem to get a brand new hype trailer for Elder Scrolls Online where everyone stops for a second saying, wow, look at this cinematic. And then Elder Scrolls Online logo comes on screen and half the audience does,
isn't that usually the part of the show? It's like in the middle of the show where, it starts to lose you and you kind of go grab a drink or a snack or something.
But you pause when the cinematic starts because it's like, ooh, what's this going to be?
Right.
And then it's ESO. And there's a lot of people who play ESO. I'm not disparaging the game. It's not something I've played. But every single time we see this awesome trailer, and then you're reminded it's Elder Scrolls. Just like Warhammer games. You're like, wow, look at this crazy cutscene, or look at this crazy cinematic. And then it comes up Warhammer. I'm like, neat.
This is going to be... It's a 2-hour show, right? And having good pacing for the entire show is one of the most difficult things you can do. But there's going to be Elder Scrolls Online stuff in the showcase, probably somewhere in the middle, and probably at least a couple of minutes worth. So we just have to expect it.
Yeah, it's going to be paired with Fallout 76 stuff as well.
Yep. Well, yeah, absolutely. Fallout 76 has had a revival, a resurgence in recent times, thanks to the TV show.
Yes, but luckily, outside of Indiana Jones and Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online, Bethesda still has a couple of other games that are expected to show up at the June showcase. As I put out on a tweet, we will have Doom Dark Ages. Do you think we just get a release date for this game, or think we're just going to get a quick teaser trailer here?
I think we'll get a release target. They'll probably just put 2025 up on the screen or something like that.
Huh?
That's kind of what I'm expecting here. I don't really know anything about what to expect from this new Doom game. Obviously, the story of Doom Eternal kind of finished, and this is some type of prequel or some type of medieval thing. I don't know, but we'll have to see. Look, if it's id, if it's Doom, then you have my interest. And this will be something that I'd be very, very excited about. One of the highlights for me, at least on paper, as we're talking about this, of the showcase for sure. But I think it's probably 2025. Probably no more visibility on when we'll see the game, though. Maybe we'll get a 2025 date now, and at next year's Developer Direct, they'll kind of lock in a date for it.
Yeah, 2025 is my expectation here, and we'll get a deeper look at it at a later date. Then we have the Starfield expansion, which is slated to come out later this year. So we will naturally get a look at that and see exactly the direction that the expansion will take us in with Shattered Space. When do you think this comes out? If you have Indiana Jones for September, when does Starfield expansion drop?
I'm going to say November, actually, for Starfield. I'm going to say November.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going with late September.
Okay.
Early October.
I'm going to say November for Starfield expansion. It's a good time. It's a good time to play an expansion for Starfield in November.
Okay. I like it. Now we're going to go into the Microsoft side of things, because this has a lot of potential here. It's all a question of what does Microsoft want to bring from Xbox Game Studios to this June showcase.
And this portion is going to make or break this showcase. It's going to separate it from 6s and 7s to one of the best showcases we've ever had, depending on what shows up. And you're right, they have a lot that they could show us.
Let's start with one of your favorite games, Microsoft's Flight Simulator.
Absolutely going to be at this showcase. We saw it was teased last year, I think, at the showcase. And if you remember, I'm not sure if it opened up the show, but it was pretty early on in the show. And they were showing us Flight Simulator, and everyone was like, oh, look, they've added some new, airports and some new airplanes to a content update. Whoop-de-doo. And then all of a sudden it's like, yo, wait, this is an all-new 2024 revision of Flight Simulator. And that got me very, very excited. This is definitely going to be at the showcase. It's going to get a release date. I'm going to say it's going to be... I'm going to say August for Flight Simulator, Nate. I know it's not that far away, but I feel like it's just coming out of the oven right now, and they're ready to get this game out.
I'm going to go a touch later. I think it's going to be closer to... I think it's going to be anywhere between September and October, between those 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
At the absolute latest, I would say December, but I think that's too late.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, I think in September-ish. September or October is my expectation with Flight Simulator right now. That brings us to Avowed, a game that is slated for 2024. We will naturally get another look at the game. When do you think Avowed is going to come out?
Avowed is coming out in 2025, and I don't think we're going to hear much from Avowed at the showcase. And I'm not saying that for any other reason other than I've always had some concerns about Avowed. I think when it first showed, and they did put 2024 next to it, I took a look at the game and I felt like this game needs more. It needs more. There is something off about this game. Not in a Redfall way where you can't salvage what's happening. There was definitely a lot I liked about Avowed, but there was also a lot that I felt like was unbaked or unfinished. I think this game is a little further behind than what people are expecting. It's 2025. I don't think it actually makes the showcase, personally.
I disagree. I think it will be at the showcase, and it will come out in November.
Okay. I mean, November is definitely something that could happen. I just feel like Microsoft can't afford to, I don't want to say just waste their opportunities that they have, but if they are serious about growing Game Pass and the future of Game Pass and making sure that all their first-party games are day one on Game Pass and they are quality games, then they really need to make sure that these games are 100% lock stock, the real deal. None of this half-baked, half-unfinished stuff that we have seen from them over the last few years. Everything has to be rock solid. I think, Forza Motorsport 7, when it came out, was less than stellar as far as its features, was not finished. Redfall obviously was a game that we know was definitely not finished. And there's other examples of games that just Halo Infinite was another one where the campaign, I mean, you're literally walking around empty corridors at the start, the starting section of the game. I don't think they can afford that luxury anymore. They know that. I think Avowed will come out when it's done. And I think when it's done is next year.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if we do see it in the showcase. I mean, I'm anticipating it. Mm-hmm. I think it comes out later this year as a holiday game, right around the same time as Indiana Jones, because they don't really have conflicting audience interest, and it just gives Microsoft that nice release flow.
Here's my question, right? If Avowed doesn't get in the showcase and it's not talked about, but there are other big titles which we will get to here shortly. How much will that, do you think that will hurt the showcase? Do you think people will even, think about Avowed?
Minimally.
Because they have a lot of stuff here. And that's what Microsoft has up their sleeve right now. They can't afford to drop a couple of games or not discuss some games because they may be in development longer than what we expected, and still walk away with a very good showcase. So I think Avowed's going to get a pass, and it's not going to make it, but we'll see.
I think if Avowed wasn't in the showcase, I don't think it would be too much of a negative detractor from the quality of the show, as long as the show does deliver on all its other fronts, because the game had it showing. People expressed their concerns in terms of the weight and impact of the combat system, but at the end of the day, it's still Avowed. I think the majority of the excitement for the 2024 lineup really rests on Indiana Jones. If Indiana Jones were the one to get a bump into 2025,
correct,
or was somehow absent from this June showcase, that would be a major talking point, and a lot of people would have concerns.
Absolutely.
Avowed, I think people would say, "Oh, it got delayed, no big deal."
Right.
And on the and in the inverse, if it comes out this year, I don't think it necessarily bolsters the lineup in any meaningful way either.
Right.
Because unfortunately, the game just feels as though it has been relegated into kind of that nice complementary type release. It's nice that it's there. It's not necessarily going to sway consumer interest one way or the other. But if you can go from, let's say, Avowed to Indiana Jones, it just lets you feel confident that you do have Game Pass, or that you have an Xbox and you're playing these games where it's just one release to another, because right now Microsoft just hasn't had a steady flow of content from their first party studios when it comes to release schedules. So if they can just have you go from one to the other, it's a nice change of pace from what we've endured during the first 4 years of this generation. And I think that's where Avowed comes in. It just, hey, that's a nice release. It's not going to be Game of the Year caliber. It's probably going to be a game that ends up on Metacritic in the low 80s, maybe high or even mid 70s. It's just going to be competent at what it does, and there will be a game there to enjoy, but it's by no means a major release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Avowed, for being so harsh on you. Prove me wrong at the June showcase.
We'll see.
Then an upcoming release coming up in September is Stalker 2. This isn't a franchise I have all that much interest in, but with its release just a couple of months away, obviously this is going to be featured in some capacity at the show.
Yep, I think so. I think it's really just to remind fans that Stalker 2 is still around as a thing, and just give people another look at the game, because obviously this game has been, it's gone through a lot of turmoil in its development for many, many different reasons over the years. So yeah, I think this is really just a refresher about Stalker 2. Hey, we know that this game is coming, and here is a really good look at the game again. So yeah, this is definitely something that I feel like will be there.
I also think this next title, it's one of Phil's favorite franchises, and it's State of Decay 3. This is the venue to show it. This is the venue to give us a new look at the game. It's been quite a while since we've had any update on State of Decay 3. So if you can give us a brand new trailer with a general release window, it'll go a long way. Definitely get a lot of people interested. It's not a franchise I personally have any interest in. They could show the greatest trailer of all time with fantastic gameplay. It's still not going to interest me.
Right.
But for those who are anticipating State of Decay 3, I think this is a show for you.
Yes. State of Decay 3 is there. As far as a release date, again, it's very hard to really put your finger on a time, because this game has been in development since forever. It's kind of giving me that Dragon Age thing all over again. It's not that long. It hasn't been 10 years, but it's been a long time. I'm gonna say November 2024 for State of Decay 3. Late November.
You think it comes out this year?
I do. Without any real certainty. I just feel like this game, man. When did we see that cinematic CGI thing? That was years ago.
I think it was 2020.
Yeah, that was such a long time ago. I think it's time.
I mean, I think we see it, but I can't imagine it comes out this year. I have it pegged for 2025.
Wow. Guess we'll see.
Now, this next game was making headlines just a few weeks ago, where we had initial reports suggesting the game was not doing well in development and there was a lot of concern around it. I then went on the Direct Xbox podcast and said I was hearing the polar opposite and how I had anticipated that it would be shown next month. I said this back in May, that I would see it next month at the June showcase. And this is, of course, The Initiative's Perfect Dark.
I think,
and
I was going to say real quick, yeah, it is. And the same thing as what I was going to say. Just like Indiana Jones, I think Perfect Dark is one of the pillars of this showcase that needs to make an appearance, and it needs to present well. And I think it will. I think it will show well. I don't know if it's going to be unanimously praised, because obviously there are diehard fans of Perfect Dark like myself and you, that we remember Perfect Dark in a certain way. And it's sometimes, when you change the formula of things around, things may get lost in translation. But I have a lot of confidence in Perfect Dark, Nate. I think that the Initiative and Crystal Dynamics are a very good partnership, and I think it's the right team, the right teams to work on this. I'm expecting not massive things here, but I'm expecting big things from Perfect Dark, and I think it'll deliver.
I mean, I'm expecting a very strong showing here. I think we're going to see a competent gameplay design.
Yep.
We're going to get a good look at the exact vision of the game. Essentially, I am expecting what we got last year from Fable with Perfect Dark this year. Last year, when we got Fable, we got a look at the game's humor. We got a good look at the game's slight look at the gameplay, but we got an idea of the exact vision that the game was aiming to deliver. And we could walk away from that Fable footage and say, okay, they captured the essence that made Fable Fable. I have confidence in what Fable is going to be. And I think that's what we're going to see here at Perfect Dark. We're going to get the vision. We're going to see if they captured the essence that is Perfect Dark. And when I say the essence of Perfect Dark, I refer to the N64 original, not Perfect Dark Zero,
right,
which captured none of the essence that made Perfect Dark. And that's all I want here. I want to get a good look at the game. I want to have a good idea of the gameplay direction, the scope of the game, what we're going to be playing when the game comes out eventually.
Yeah.
And that's all I want here. I want to know what the initiative has in store for us. It can't just be another CG trailer like we got back in 2020.
That would be disastrous.
Yes. This has to be a look at what the game is going to be, what we're going to play when it comes out. And that's what I'm anticipating from Perfect Dark here. And I think they're going to deliver that. There's definitely going to be a lot of conversation over, is this the proper direction that fans want Perfect Dark to take? And it pains me to say this, but individuals like us who played the original Perfect Dark 20 plus years ago, the majority of individuals today don't know what Perfect Dark is.
You're absolutely right.
So they can really take this in any direction they want, because what Perfect Dark was is irrelevant to the modern audience who never played Perfect Dark.
100%. And I think they will. Like, I don't think they're just going to give us, Perfect Dark 02 or something absurd like that.
Don't even put that in the universe.
But ultimately, you're right. This is really more about the branding and the universe and the characters, rather than, well, Perfect Dark was a game on the N64 and we want to kind of, emulate that success. I mean, you want to emulate the success, replicate the success, but you also can't build a game like that anymore in 2024 and expect it to do well. And they know that, right? So, look, if they can show some gameplay, Nate, just a little slice of the gameplay loop where Joanna is messing around with the different gadgets that she has at her disposal to get, to breach through certain sections of the game, of the map, or to take down enemies silently via stealth methods or whatever. If we can have a showcase of the gadgets in the game and some of the gameplay, I'm sold. Like, that's all you have to show me here. So I think as far as, will we see a release date for Perfect Dark? It's very, very hard to answer that. But I think they'll probably flash a 2025 sign on the screen at the end of it, just to let people know that, yes, this game is coming next year.
Yeah, I think the gameplay direction really has to be the core focus here. And as you said, if it's just a quick vertical slice of the directive of the gameplay, be it weapons with a secondary mode, is it going to be a third person or a first person?
Yep.
And they answer those core questions. Is it going to be a hybrid with some stealth mechanics, or you can go guns blazing? They can answer those basic questions. Then that's all they need to do here. You just have to convince people we are making good progress. What we have here is a passion project and we're doing well at it. We want you to be excited about what we're working on. It's been a while since we've last showed you, and this is why. That's all they have to deliver here. And you're going to have people get excited for Perfect Dark again. Now, in terms of that release window, I mean, it's really hard to say. This is definitely one of those cases where maybe it's 2026. Maybe it is targeting 2025 because it's been in development for a long time. It's just a question of how far along is it, and really need to see exactly what they're going to show here before I can even give a guesstimate on the release window.
Yeah.
I would love for it to be 2025 because Microsoft could have a banger next year if it is 2025, especially if you go in with that expectation and operate under the belief that Fable is coming next year and titles like Clockwork Revolution and a new Forza Horizon game and so forth. All of a sudden, 2025 is sounding like a banner year.
Well, I think my counterpoint to that would be if Perfect Dark was not 2025 and it was 2026, then why is Xbox showing it at the showcase? Why would it be there? Because we're talking a game that's potentially 18 months out, maybe 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years. We're getting back to the bad old days where they're just showing us things that we're not going to see for another potentially 2 years. And unfortunately, Perfect Dark is not Grand Theft Auto, right? So I feel like if they're going to show us Perfect Dark, they have to give us a window of when we should expect it. And if they flash 2026 on the screen, which they would not do that because they'll get buried if they do that, I'd be very surprised. If it shows, Nate, it has to be 25 in my opinion.
I think it would fall into the same situation as Fable did last year. They showed Fable last year. That the expectation is that game comes out in 2025. So it kind of would fall into that same situation that you just described. Why not hold it until 2024? And I think the reason you show it is to silence all of the questions and concerns. And you show it, say, things are fine. And especially with Fable last year, you had a lot of reports leading up to June that the game was having turnover at the studio, that there were concerns about the development and the direction.
Right.
And what happens? June comes, they show that trailer and gameplay footage, and everyone kind of walks away saying, never mind, that looks great.
Yeah.
And it almost is a mirror-to-mirror incident. Earlier this year, there's concerns about Perfect Dark. You come into June, you show us Perfect Dark, and people are going to walk away saying, okay, I don't have those concerns anymore. You have now given me enough footage that I have confidence in what the initiative is building. Even if the game is 2026, I'm not going to bug you for an update. You're making progress. Keep working on it.
Right.
And when you're ready to communicate further details, we'll be ready. And I think that's really what this showing is going to be all about. Just silencing the concerns, putting to rest any of those questions that the game is fine. We know what we're doing. And we're going to deliver a quality product when the time is right. But here's a first look at it. Let us know what you think. But that leads us to Fable. Obviously, it had the showing last year. Do you think it makes a repeat showing, or is it something that they hold until maybe early next year to give it a release date, perhaps in a developer direct?
I think we're going to see Fable at next year's developer direct with some more targeted marketing, some more targeted release window. This is, I think, out of all the games that I'm struggling with, other than Avowed. I mean, Avowed I wasn't struggling with. I feel like Avowed was never going to be there, but Fable is a game that I kind of am juggling whether it could be in this, because there's definitely compelling reasons why it would be in this showcase. But there's also good reasons to suggest, well, it was last year. We did get a look at it. So maybe they just hold it for early next year. Because, one of the things about this showcase is Microsoft isn't going to show their entire hand to us at the showcase. They're going to show us a lot, but they're not going to show us everything. So I think Fable is probably not going to make it this showcase. It'll probably be in next year's developer direct.
I agree that if Fable is coming out next year, I think it's better off being held either in the developer direct or if Microsoft has any other showcase later this year. I don't think this is the proper venue for it, only because they are going to be highlighting so many other games that it feels as though it could potentially get lost in the shuffle. And, it's easy enough to hold it till early next year, give us a deeper dive look, date it for second half of next year, and just let the game really have its own time and shine and focus So I think Fable does miss out on this year. Would I be shocked if it showed up? No. But I'm not anticipating that it will be.
Right.
Now, this next game, this is going to be a game where I think everyone watching the showcase is just going to come to pause. They're going to stop. They're going to be in awe of what they're seeing from a visual standpoint. And they're going to say, this is what next-gen visuals can be. And we kind of got a, I guess you could call it a teaser of what next-gen visuals can be with Hellblade 2. And I am talking about the Coalition's Gears of War 6.
All right, this Aaron Greenberg.
Is going to be
calm down, Aaron Greenberg. Calm down. Tell me why Gears of War 6 or Gears 6 is going to be that game that just blows us away as far as visuals. What are we talking about?
The Coalition are Unreal Engine wizards. We know what they can do. They aided Epic when they were to create that Matrix demo.
Mm-hmm.
We know what the Coalition can achieve visually. Gears of War back on the 360 was kind of the moment that you did look at a game and say, wow,
yeah.
Look at what these systems can do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And Gear 6, I think, is going to be that moment again, because these systems really haven't been utilized to their full power. Hellblade 2, definitely, wow, from a visual standpoint. Gear 6 is going to be the game that takes it to the next level. And when Gear 6 shows up at this showcase, it's just going to be a question of, what are they going to show us? Are we just going to get a very quick teaser trailer that's likely to be in-engine? Or are we going to get a look at the tone, the atmosphere, the setting that Gear 6 is going to give us? Because if they go for the latter, this is going to be a moment that rivals an E3 moment where people are just going to stop and say, holy shit, did you see that Gear 6 trailer? And that's what I want Microsoft and the Coalition to deliver. I want them to give us that hype trailer with visuals that melt our minds, that you go to your TV after the showcase ends and you get the 4K trailer from YouTube and you watch it on your 4K OLED because you have to see every fine detail that they had featured in that trailer. That's what I want the Coalition to deliver. Any less, I would say it was a misstep.
Yeah.
Now is the time to show off what your best development studio can do. The Coalition is that for Microsoft. This is their studio. This is a studio that has all the talent in the world. They can blow our minds, gameplay directives, visually. If they come to this show with that type of hype trailer, nothing else matters.
I do think
that will single-handedly win Microsoft Summer Game Fest. That will make the show the June showcase or the showcase for Xbox that just silenced everybody.
I think Gear 6 is one of those important pillars of the showcase that will hold up the showcase along with Perfect Dark and Indiana Jones. But Gear 6 is probably the most important game at the Xbox showcase for the reasons that you said. Look, Coalition, they're the best at what they do. They do amazing, amazing work. I think about Hivebusters that came out a few years ago. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Visuals, gameplay was just an amazing DLC snack that I wished never ended. So I'm very, very excited about what we'll see from Gears 6. I do think that this is probably going to be a reveal of the game to show off some visuals, some of the gameplay, and really what the Coalition's been working on, just to kind of update everyone, just to let people know that, yes, we are working on Gears 6. It does exist, but I don't think there'll be any commitment as far as when this game is coming out. However, I did go back and look. Gears 5 came out in 2019, Nate. 2019. We are talking 5 years ago. 5 years. But Gears 6 is one of those games, I think, that you you kind of put up there with one Gears game in a generation. So I don't know when we'll expect to see Gears 6 actually release, but I would say it's probably not until 2026 at the earliest. So I think really what we'll see from Gears 6 at the showcase is really just an announcement, a reveal, some type of technical deep dive, and to really kind of show off to fans of Gears, fans of Xbox, and really just fans of video games. This is the benchmark that we're setting for next generation or for this generation, and try to catch us because we've got some really amazing tech here. And I can't wait. I'm very, very excited about Gears 6.
I mean, in some ways, I think Gears 6 is the pillar of the showcase. Like, if Gears 6 didn't show up, I think the show loses a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
Like, it could be everything else that we have talked about up to this point. You know, Indiana Jones, Avowed, Flight Simulator, the third-party games. But I think Gears 6 is that moment. That's what everyone's anticipating. That is a large bit of the hype cycle, is seeing Gears 6. And if it's not there, the show could be quality throughout, but that's definitely going to be kind of that momentum buster.
Yeah.
It needs to be here.
Yeah, it'll definitely drop some points for sure. And I think it will be there. I don't think it's really a question of, if. It's a question of when it's coming out. And we probably won't even know for a while. But look, I'm very excited about this. We saw a taste of what, Unreal Engine 5 can do with Hellblade 2. I really enjoyed the game. I thought the graphics were phenomenal. This is going to be, I don't want to hype things, but potentially could be better than Hellblade as far as visuals. And look, it's Gears, I'm ready for a new one. Again, I loved Hivebusters. I loved Gears 5. Give me Gears 6. Very excited about it.
Now, naturally, Gears 6 is going to bring up this game. A lot of rumors, a lot of talk. Gears of War Collection. Is it real? Does it show up here? What do you think?
So, Nate, Gears Collection is something I've always said doesn't exist, is not real. And the reason why I say that is because there's really been no substantial information about this game. We've heard some rumblings, we've heard some chatter. There's been a little bit of corroboration, I will say, between various journalists and outlets about a Gears collection. But I don't really think that the Gears collection is real. However, I do want to add this because we do know that Xbox now is deciding to bring their games to multi-platform. And that does change my mind a little bit, that potentially we could have a Gears collection on PlayStation 5, right? I think that would be a very smart move that could really do well for Xbox on PlayStation, having a Gears collection. However, I'm going to stick with my guns and say that I don't really know if this is a thing that actually exists. What are your thoughts?
I believe the Gears collection is real. I don't think it shows up at this June showcase. And
hold on. If it's real, I keep being told it's real. And I think the first time someone mentioned Gears collection was about 3 years ago. Would that be fair to say?
Maybe. Maybe 2 years ago.
If it doesn't show up this year, then when would we see this game, I guess?
Well, you see, that's the thing, is that I believe the Gears collection is real, but if Gears 6 doesn't come out till 2026, you don't need the Gears collection in 2024. You release it in 2025.
That's
So
true.
you do it next year. And it all comes down to, when does Gears of War 6 release? Because this is going to be that type of release that you're going to use to generate hype and excitement leading up to Gear 6. You're not going to release it 2-3 years before it, because that would serve no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give it a closer window to each other. And there's definitely the argument to be made that if you're announcing Gear 6 at the showcase, naturally you would want to announce the Gears collection, because they would just go hand in hand. But it comes down to that release. And even to the point you were making, with Microsoft approaching multi-platform releases more aggressively, something like the Gears collection makes a lot of sense. These are older games, and there's really no harm in bringing the Gears collection to PlayStation 5, also bringing it to PC and Xbox, because these games never came to PC with the original trilogy outside of Gears 1. Easy release.
It definitely does make me rethink the Gears collection now that, Microsoft has committed to bringing their games to PlayStation. But I just pulled this up again. So initially, the Gears collection was rumored on Xbox era all the way back in January of 2022. So we're talking about,
we're just over 2 years.
We'll say 2 years. Mm-hmm. And there's just been nothing since then. There was all this talk that it was in test, it was ready to come out, it was ready to be revealed, it was ready to be announced, and radio silence. And for me, that just doesn't really fit. And that's the part I've always had difficulty with the Gears collection, that I feel like if we was going to hear something about Gears collection, we would have heard about it by now, outside of the same kind of sources that kind of talk about it. But if you say that you think it exists, then I put some weight onto that as well. And with the PlayStation thing, it's hard, it's hard now to say, well, why wouldn't they do that? That's kind of leaving money on the table in many ways. Because I think Gears on the PlayStation would do very well. The multiplayer side, I think, would be very good to see on the PlayStation. It would definitely open up that franchise to new fans. But I'm going to stick with my guns, Nate. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't expect that it would show up here. My one hang up with the Gears collection has always been, how do you approach the multiplayer? Because the multiplayer of each Gears of War game differ from each other quite significantly. Gears 1 does not feel like Gears 2. Gears 2 doesn't feel like Gears 3. Gears 3 doesn't feel like Gears 4, and so on. So how would you really deliver this collection? Would you just use Gears 5 multiplayer as the base and have maps across all of those games? Would you just allow to go online with each individual Gears game with its multiplayer? That's always been my hang up in terms of how you would approach it.
Right.
But I do believe it exists. It's just a question of, when are they going to announce it? And I think next year would be the better timing, especially with the Gears 6 release likely still at least 2 years off. So you hold that game and you release it, 12 to 18 months ahead of the Gears 6 release date. So right now it just doesn't make sense for me. Now, Microsoft does have a lot of other games that they have announced that we either haven't got another look at or haven't had a meaningful look at. Some of these titles include Clockwork Revolution, Outer Worlds 2, and Towerborn. Out of the three, which ones do you think show up at the June showcase?
Towerborn. With a release date. I think Outer Worlds 2 is a developer direct next year type of deal. Clockwork Revolution, I couldn't really say. Give me your take.
I agree with your three. I think Towerborn, we get an update at the June showcase. I think Outer Worlds 2 will wait until after Avowed comes out, and then we'll get a better look at what's happening with Outer Worlds. And then with Clockwork Revolution, I think that's something we get a deeper look at next year. Maybe we see something at the Game Awards because Microsoft does like to have something at the Game Awards. But considering 2 out of 3 of these games feel like 2025 releases, I think they could easily wait until that developer direct next year or even a June showcase next year to give us a further look at the titles. Because when you really look at the possibility of the showcase, it can't have all of this.
Right.
Because then the show is just way too stacked.
Absolutely.
But the potential does exist that Microsoft could have these games here. And that's kind of the exciting yet concerning part, is that they could, but they naturally won't. And I mean, this doesn't even include other potential new announcements that they could have. And I mean, one game that I have heard about, but I don't have enough sourcing to be able to confirm, is that there may be a Blue Dragon remake or remaster announcement at the June showcase. And like I said, I don't have enough sourcing to have full-on confirmation of this, but it's definitely something I've been hearing about. Would that announcement excite you?
No, not really. I mean, Blue Dragon was fine on the 360 back in the day, but look, I'm not the right target audience for a Blue Dragon game anyway. I think there's something cool about bringing it to a new generation and maybe having fans experience it for the first time. Look, it's a beloved game. I know people really like it, but it doesn't really excite me personally.
Now, what other new announcements do you think Microsoft could have here? Just in terms of games that they've either have released or...
I think the only other thing that comes to mind for me is Double Fine is a studio that released Psychonauts 2 in 2021, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was August of 21.
Yep. They have been obviously radio silent since then. I know that they had Psychonauts 2 on PlayStation 5 and they did some other, smaller things here and there. But they are a Microsoft-owned company. They were acquired by Microsoft back in many years ago during the development of that game. I think we're going to see what is next from the mind of Tim Schafer at the showcase. I think it's really going to be just a tease of what's next from Double Fine. And I think a lot of it, kind of what you were talking about with Perfect Dark, Nate, is to just kind of alleviate some concerns about the state of Xbox studios. I think even though games are front and center the message at this showcase, as it should be, I think there's also some underlying kind of messaging around, look, we know what we're doing. We've had a rough, start to this year, but fans and customers have to trust us. We have some world-class studios here, and we have some really good games that we're building. So I think a lot of that is really kind of showing us something about some studios that we hadn't heard of in quite some time. And I think Double Fine is a fine, no pun intended, example of that. Double Fine was a studio that unfairly, I will say, was kind of thrown into they're next on the list to be shuttered after the demise of Tango, because there's really no merit to saying something like that other than the fact that they haven't released a product since 2021. So I think it's really more of a case now of put up or shut up, and I do think that they have something new to show us at the showcase. So we'll see what Tim Schafer has for us. How do you feel about that?
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Double Fine show up with their game. I believe it's called, is it Kiln? Kiln is a project that they had been working on.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that make an appearance here. It'd definitely be a cool little announcement. Now, going back to like Blue Dragon, it would be kind of the resurrection of an older IP, something from Microsoft's backlog.
Ooh.
Do you think Microsoft could potentially have any other older IPs that maybe they announce a new entry to during the June showcase?
Yeah. What if they partner with Sega and bring back Condemned Criminal Origins? I talked about Condemned in the last episode. I'm just going to keep mentioning Condemned.
You're just going to will it into existence.
Hey, may as well. No, to be absolutely serious. I mean, look, Xbox has a lot of dormant IPs they're sitting on. They could bring back. You know, I think about games like Cameo and you know, some of the stuff that Rare was doing, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, and obviously Blinks. The Blinks will never come back, but there's so much stuff that they're sitting on. They've got you know, Project Gotham Racing, right? That's another game that I would love to see get revived, right? So much stuff that they could potentially look at. Remember that game Breakdown they did with Namco? I mean, they could do that. There's the there's some good stuff here.
Forget about Breakdown. I don't know. First person fighting game again.
I don't. I mean, look, they did Mirror's Edge. I mean, that was pretty good for a first person style game. But look, ultimately, they have a lot of stuff. I mean, what's Phantom Break? What's it called? Phantom Dust.
Phantom Dust. They've tried to revitalize that game like 3 times now.
Phil loves Crackdown. Could be a Crackdown game. Who knows? I mean, I know Crackdown 3 was a game that was riddled in development hell, but it was also a bad time in Microsoft's kind of life. You know, they were well and truly entrenched in the Xbox One era with TV on one side and the power of Azure and the cloud to do all this compute offline for us, all this bullshit that really amounted to nothing. But, you know, if they reset the script and said, let's do a proper Crackdown game, Crackdown, 4, why not? I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we don't see Blue Dragon, I think we see Microsoft revitalize one of their older IPs.
What do you think?
And we see it at the June showcase.
What would be an IP that you would like to see them revive?
Outside of like a Blue Dragon, a Lost Odyssey, I would like to see them do. Man, something else that they could revive in their backlog. I think Lost Odyssey would kind of just be my golden goose.
That's a good pick. A lot of people have wanted that. I know you can play it on BC, but man, a proper revival of that game would be pretty sweet.
Now, this is my last prediction for Xbox Game Studio games. I think we see a brand new Halo game.
Oh my God. You left this till last. Out of nowhere, just a new Halo game.
Yeah. I think we see a new Halo game.
In what capacity do we see it? Do we see a tease? Do we just see a Master Chief helmet on the ground?
I think you have to do like a little more meaningful of a trailer. You have to give, an idea of what we're getting here, how it separates itself from Halo Infinite. Do something like a Halo ODST type expansion tier release. I think we get something like that.
I'm going to disagree with you on a new Halo game, but I will meet you in the middle somewhere and say there will be some Halo content updates at this showcase. And I'm talking about pertaining to Halo Infinite personally. How about that? That's a good compromise.
Okay, so we will agree that Halo
will make an appearance.
In some capacity.
Halo will have an appearance at this showcase.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Yeah.
Now, we naturally have to talk about hardware, because Microsoft did earlier this year kind of imply that they have a hardware announcement that would excite people. And there's the anticipation that we're going to get the all-digital Series X. How this would excite anybody is beyond me, because if you already own a Series X, you have the fantastic option of having physical media. I struggle to understand who's really out there looking for a digital only Series X. I'm don't understand why Microsoft would view this as a significant announcement, but this does feel as though this would be the venue for them to announce this. But there is the ongoing rumor that they could potentially tease and give some first information about a handheld Xbox.
Yeah, so I think maybe we're getting our lines crossed here. I think Sarah Bond was referring to the Xbox handheld. And look, that has the potential to be a very exciting hardware announcement. I think handhelds are very much something that is very popular right now. We've obviously seen the success of the Steam Deck. The ROG Ally is also another system that has had a lot of success. So a Xbox handheld, which has been rumored before, and there's chatter about that. That's an exciting announcement. Xbox has never done a handheld before. They've always done big kind of giant consoles that are usually oversized compared to the competition. So having Xbox hardware in a very small handheld form factor is very exciting. And it's exciting for me as well. That's something I could get behind if they do it right. But that's a different conversation. The digital Series X, the white Series X, which has the disk drive option omitted, or the DVD drive, Blu-ray drive, that is not the exciting product. However, that is what is going to get announced at this showcase. I think the digital Series X is what gets announced. The handheld is saved for something else, a later announcement. Potentially, they obviously had dropped the Series X at the Game Awards, so there is some precedent there. They could potentially show us the handheld at the Game Awards. But look, for the showcase, Nate, I don't think there's a handheld. I think it's the digital Series X, and it's not the exciting new hardware announcement that Sarah Bond was referring to.
I do think we see the all digital revision because Microsoft does have a history of announcing revisions at showcases and E3 conferences. But I do feel as though they're going to give a tease to the Xbox Portable, the handheld Xbox, whatever we want to call it, even if it is just in a limited capacity, even if it is just we have intent to do this thing and we will have further information at a later date, something to excite people around the brand itself, to show that they are committed to hardware. Because you have a lot of people saying, well, what's the future of Xbox hardware? I think a minor announcement like this allows them just to communicate, we have a future, we have a roadmap, we have plans, and our plans are to expand beyond just a traditional stationary console. We're also going to go for that handheld approach.
Yeah.
And this is where you can play your Game Pass games on the go and such. And I think they just have to do a very, very minor communication here to generate a lot of buzz and excitement. It doesn't have to be anything significant. I don't need to see a 3D render of what it could look like. I don't need a release date, specs, or anything like that. I just want to hear some generalized plans of what their intent is going to be moving into their next generation of hardware, and being able to confirm and come out and say one of our pillars is going to be a portable Xbox will go a long way with fans to having confidence in the future of the brand. So I'm kind of going into this June showcase that they will do a very brief mention along those lines. But another thing I am anticipating from this showcase is an expansion in backwards compatibility. I think we're going to see brand new games get added to the backwards compatibility log, as well as see a huge expansion in terms of Game Pass releases, because Activision is now part of Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And we've been waiting for them to add Activision games to Game Pass now for quite a while. So it's time.
Yep.
It's time to come out, and I don't care if it's a shadow drop where they come out and say, here's Call of Duty available on Game Pass and backwards compatibility right now.
Yeah.
Something along those lines would generate a lot of discussion online. And when Xbox is the only platform where you can play some of those, 360, PlayStation 3 era Call of Duty games because they're not backwards compatible on PS5 for obvious reasons. People love Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. They love Modern Warfare 2. You get those on Game Pass. I don't want to call them system sellers, but they kind of are to a very specific audience.
Yeah, look, I think the Back-Compat program, when it stopped a couple of years ago, was really out of necessity. They admitted that it was either due to technical reasons, more importantly, licensing reasons. With the acquisition, obviously, of Activision, that does open up the door for more games to come back to backward compatibility. And look, we're talking about Black Ops 6. I could very easily see Microsoft say, and you can play Black Ops 1 through 5 on Game Pass, because we're bringing them all back. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. The Back-Compat program is something that, while it does kind of stop and start, they'll spin it up, they'll do it for a couple of years, and then they'll stop, and everyone thinks, well, that's the end. But look, Microsoft has been doing this stuff since 2005 with the 360. So they've always had that backward compatibility layer, and they always continue to iterate upon it. Just because it's currently dormant as of the making of this episode, I would not be surprised if, they basically announced they're spinning it back up, and there are, a handful of games, 10, 15, 20 games that make their way back to the Back-Compat program.
See, and this is why when we talked about Call of Duty having that deep dive following the showcase, I think Call of Duty makes sense, because if they come out during that deep dive and say, here's the whole back catalog of Call of Duty games available on Game Pass right now, it justifies that deep dive in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because it's a Call of Duty deep dive.
Right.
It's beyond just Black Ops 6. This is how we are bringing Call of Duty to the platform as a whole.
Yeah.
And every single Call of Duty is available to you right now.
And
I think that's how Microsoft is going to approach that.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. It's time. Like, again, if it's one of those things that if they don't do it, then you have to kind of ask, well, what's going on? Unless it's really just a matter of more time is needed to get these things ready. But even, like you said, announcing your intent to bring Back-Compat back, I think would be sufficient, because we haven't heard about it for a couple of years now. I think it's about 2 years since they kind of sunset the program. But yeah, I think now is the time.
Now, there has been an ongoing rumor that Microsoft is going to have a shadow drop of a first-party game of some sort. So what do you think? What type of predictions do you have for a shadow drop, if anything?
A shadow drop of a first-party game. It's not any of the ones we talked about, that's for sure, because most of them probably we won't see until next year. Ooh.
I think the earliest release date you were giving games was September, so that'd be tough.
First party shadow drop. Well,
depending on how one really reads the rumor, maybe it's just related to a first party game, or perhaps the rumor is just inaccurate. But if you had to just do any shadow drop, what would be your choice?
Well, we were talking about backward compatibility. What if Modern Warfare 3, which is the current Call of Duty game, is the shadow drop? Right? Could happen. I guess technically that's not even backward compatible. It's current gen.
Yeah.
maybe it's not Modern Warfare 3, because that's still the game that everyone's playing. Maybe it's last year's game, potentially.
So you would go with some of the older Call of Duty games.
Yeah, but not Back-Compat ones that are still native Series X titles. So maybe a Modern Warfare 2 or something along those lines. I could see that. I'm going to say Call of Duty.
I think we're going to get the creation tool for Starfield.
Oh,
Todd Howard kind of talked about it recently when he did the interview with Kind of Funny,
I like it.
where he said we'll have more news on this soon. He already had mentioned that the tool is in hands of creators on Steam and such. So seems like a good place to just kind of drop it. I personally will never use it, but I
Yeah.
could see something like that dropping because they're going to, they're going to come out, they're going to talk about the expansion DLC. And I think like, hey, and starting today, the creation tool will be available to creators to create mods, blah, 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 blah. And you'll have that community really excited to get into it. It's nothing I'll touch, but I could see a shadow drop of that kind. It certainly makes a lot more sense to me than them shadow dropping a full-on game because out of the lineup of games we talked about, really nothing fits that. If I had to force a game into that shadow drop situation, the only thing that would make sense to me, and it's a game neither of us anticipate will be there, and it's a game you don't even think exists, would be the Gears collection.
Yeah, it's not going to be there.
So, but we will end on our hopes and willing it into existence. What is your pipe dream?
Well, I kind of mentioned it before, but I want to see Project Gotham Racing revived and available on next generation Xbox. What are your hopes?
I definitely
and
endorse
dreams?
that.
Dude, I love Project Gotham. Every single Project Gotham game is good. Every single Project Gotham game, even the first one, even though it's quite dated, this is something really awesome about those games. I want to see Project Gotham make a return. Get the band back together, Microsoft. You have the money. Make it happen.
I mean, Project Gotham at its time was a revolutionary racing game. You had the Kudo system, which you kind of have in Forza Horizon now.
Could bring it back. Could make it
was all street racing.
Could make it more service based.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a really smart and well-designed game because so much it was street racing where the Kudo system was really based on, well, one, you'd go through the cones, then you would have drift to get multipliers, then you would have to go through time gates and everything. It's a really smart game.
What's yours, Nate? What are you willing into the universe? Make it count. Make it count, because this is important.
1 versus 100.
That's a great pick. That is a great pick. I'd love to see 1 versus 100 come back.
It just makes sense. It's the perfect Game Pass game because you could play it on your phone. You could play it via the cloud. You could play it on your TV via the cloud. It makes too much sense. And the fact that we have not seen it continues to offend me. And if I had to go for another will into existence, I'm going to will Blue Dragon into existence. Like I said, I haven't been able to confirm it, so let me will it into existence.
I like it. I like it.
But that will conclude our 2+ hour Xbox June Showcase predictions episode. We will return next episode with our Stream Labs, where we will answer all of your questions at the end of it. It will likely be at the second half of our Xbox June Showcase reaction video.
What is the word that we have to tell our listeners that they have to post in the comments to know that they reached the end of the episode?
If you reach this far into the episode, you must post bring us Project Gotham 1 versus 100, Blue Dragon, Hollow Knight Silksong release date, and Call of Duty on Game Pass in the comment section, and we will know you made it the full 2 hours.
How about you type in this word in the comments? Constellation. If you got to the end of the episode, type in Constellation, and I will give you a thumbs up personally in the comments.
Okay, I endorse that. We'll see how many constellations appear in the comments section. I have a feeling it's going to be a very scarce sky. If we were navigators, we'd be lost at sea. Yes, that concludes our predictions episode. Let us know what you think Microsoft may have in store at their Xbox June showcase in the comment section below. And if you agree with any of our predictions, or if you think our predictions are just nonsensical ramblings of two old men. But until next time, I'd like to thank MVG for joining me as always.
It's always a pleasure, Nate, and rock on the showcase. I think it's going to be a good one.
I mean, even half of our predictions come true. It sounds like it should be a hell of a show. But until then, give the video a like if you like it. If you didn't, give it a dislike. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, continue to embrace the hate.